to The Debrief, everybody. We'll take you back to the courtroom for testimony from Markeith Lloyd in just a moment. But first, we now know the name of the police officer who shot and killed a Fort Worth, Texas woman in her own home over the weekend. Officer Aaron Dean was the person wearing this body cam in the overnight hours between Friday and Saturday. A concerned neighbor called a non-emergency police number because the door of Atatiana Jefferson's home was open. Within seconds of arriving, Officer Dean saw Jefferson through a bedroom window, open fire, and killed her. He was never attacked. This is the victim of that shooting, Atatiana Jefferson, a pre-med graduate of Xavier University and sold equipment for the pharmaceutical industry. Attorney Lee Merritt set up a GoFundMe page in her honor. By mid-afternoon today, Monday, it was about $30,000 away from making a $200,000 goal. The police chief there in Fort Worth called the shooting senseless and expressed sympathy, apologies, condolence, and prayers from his entire department to the family of the victim. Then he demanded action.
We've received many calls from the community expressing their concerns and demands. And I assure you, as chief of this department, I share those concerns and I demand a thorough, transparent, and speedy investigation. This will not be an opportunity for us to make excuses, but rather to investigate this case to the fullest, to provide the justice we all seek for Atatiana. The officer who shot Atatiana was served his written administrative complaint on Sunday. At that time, he was also placed on detached duty and stripped of his badge and firearm. My intent was to meet with him today to terminate his employment with the Fort Worth Police Department. However, the officer tendered his resignation this morning before we met. Even though he no longer works for the city, we will continue the administrative investigation as if he did. The case will be completed and reviewed by the chain of command. Had the officer not resigned, I would have fired him for violations of several policies, including our use of force policy, our de-escalation policy, and unprofessional conduct. Additionally, the separation paperwork that is sent to the state licensing agency, the Texas Commission on Law Enforcement, will reflect that he was dishonorably discharged from employment with the Fort Worth Police Department. Despite his resignation, the officer still faces criminal charges from the major case investigation. I personally checked on the progress of that case repeatedly, and I anticipate a substantial update to provide you no later than tomorrow. Additionally, we have also presented a preliminary case to the FBI to review the officer's actions for possible civil rights violations.
Retired LAPD Sergeant Cheryl Dorsey is with us tonight. So Cheryl, the chief there listed a series of swift actions. It might sound to many observers like he's throwing the book at the officer who fired his weapon. What's your assessment?
Well, listen, this was an easy fix because he's a rookie. And so they're absolutely doing a punctious pilot on him. They are washing their hands of him. And I'm glad that they stripped him statewide so he can't go and get on with another agency, at least within the state of Texas.
Should the officer have been fired before he had the chance to resign his position here?
Well, you know, ideally, they probably would have liked to have fired him. But since he beat them to the punch, understanding that because he's not vested, he has no standing, he really doesn't have the support that a tenured officer would have. And so he just did what they were going to do to him before they did it to him.
Should the officer have been, we talked about that for a second here. The chief said that the only time he would consider it safe to fire into a dwelling is if an officer was being fired upon from within the dwelling and the officer knew only one person was inside. Do you agree with that?
Well, listen, absolutely. Anytime an officer discharges their weapon, it's only in the immediate defense of life, immediate defense of life. And so there was no imminent threat. He was on the outside. And even if he thought he was going to be able, Aaron Dean, to say he perceived a threat, he would not be able to reasonably articulate that because he was outside. He had the ability to take cover and concealment. He could have given orders. He could have stood down and requested a backup. There were all sorts of options that he had available. We're taught and trained to use deadly force as a last resort. We are only allowed to use that force necessary to overcome resistance or in the immediate defense of life, and neither one of those things applied.
I want to go back to that body cam footage because we slowed it down there. I want to look at it again. It shows the officer pointing his flashlight inside the victim's window, and she looks out at him. You can see it clearly in the footage. He never identifies himself as a police officer. He just tells her to put her hands up while aiming a blinding light in her face, and then he pulls the trigger just seconds later. It was 2 seconds after he said, put your hands up, put your hands up. Then she's shot and killed. How is that in any way acceptable?
Well, it's not. And that's why he's no longer on the police force. Because listen, is it unreasonable to expect at 2 o'clock in the morning that maybe the residents might be contained within that dwelling? But if sense were common, everyone would have it, and you can't teach it. Unfortunately, this woman lost her life, and there's an 8-year-old now who is forever changed because he witnessed her losing her life.
The body cam footage that police have released shows at least one weapon on the floor of the bedroom. If the officer saw that, would that have sent some kind of a trigger off in his mind that maybe he was in danger? Or is this just another completely unreasonable fact that's been injected into this?
People are allowed to have weapons in the home to defend themselves. And so the mere existence of a weapon, even him seeing it, she hadn't picked it up, it wasn't in her hand, she wasn't producing it in a threatening manner, and so none of that mattered after the fact. And we don't even know if he saw it because he acted so quickly. And so while that was, nice to know, I don't even know why they explained that there was a weapon found in the house, but to kind of muck up the waters.
It's another fact that's been dropped into the investigation. It's been characterized by many people just as you characterized it. Cheryl Dorsey, appreciate your insight on this case with us tonight.